Alright, guys, welcome back. We are watching Onimonogatari Episode 2, Shinobu Time Part 2. Last time, we got chased around by the darkness, and we talked to Ononoki and Shinobu. I guess we did a little bit more than just talk to them. um, but I don't know, we're trapped. We're stuck in the cram school. Also, I didn't even talk about this last time. Or did I? Maybe I did. The cram school is gonna, burn down, tonight. So, we better, get out of here. But that aside, um, yeah, I don't know. The darkness is running around. Shinobu's going to tell us about her past. It's Shinobu time. Sounds good. So you can line your own copy up with this if you want to. We are starting in 3, 2, 1. Okay, that is very beautiful art. Right. Don't get jealous. Okay, Shinobu, you're one to talk about jealousy, huh? Oh, so beautiful. Sure. Yeah, I believe it. In Antarctica. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. It's like her own existence, relies on, just like other oddities, people knowing that she exists, essentially, or thinking she exists, I guess. Yeah. Okay. It is a very literal, yeah. And she can feel it. Oh, that definitely. I think you could really find meaning in that, right? she jumped all the way from Antarctica to Japan. Very impressive. Very impressive. I'm sure. I'm sure it did. Much better than Ononoki. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ooh. There it is. And how long ago was this? 400 years, right? Yeah. Old Japan. Wonder what was going on in Japan 400 years ago. Landed in a lake. Story of a good for nothing demon. Huh. Okay. Okay. No, immediately there's already, I feel like, a lot of the idea of her existence, I guess, being weakened by people like not knowing about her. I don't know. I think that you can definitely get some meaning out of that as just like an idea, right? Like, I guess it kind of plays into like a whole bunch of like themes we've talked about, right? Like being connected to others and that being like, I don't know, what makes you a person in a sense, right? Kind of, the opposites of what Aragi thought, like in Kizu, right? Hmm. I've thought a lot about Kaganui's whole thing that she was talking about in Nisei. About how, like, you know what, we'll talk about it in the discussion, we don't have time. We'll talk about it in the discussion. What does it do? Sure. Falls back down. Okay, okay. Interesting. And she fixed it, huh? Mm-hmm. Entirely by accident. I'm going to naturally assume that wherever she landed was very close to where we are right now, but maybe not. Ooh, a god? Yeah, sure, sure. Talking about gods again, huh? After the last arc, that is interesting. Okay, okay. She's a podcaster. Interesting. Well, that rain was granted by a god. Yeah, yeah. Sure, yeah. She also probably looked very impressive to Japanese people 400 years ago. Okay, I guess. I guess. Sure. God, I did not catch any of that. Hmm. Wasn't fit to be a god. Interesting. Huh. Interesting. That means something. If you know what I mean. Seems pretty nice. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. I'm just thinking about stuff. I really want to talk, but I just don't have time. I gotta read it. What? They probably just did it themselves, right? Oh, never mind. She did it. Sure. Of course. Of course. Of course. You could do anything, obviously. Shinobu was, like, literally God. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. God, this art is so beautiful. What is it? What does proper work as a god mean? Okay. Way to kill time. Interesting. Yeah, so she wants to strengthen her like existence again. Yeah, exactly, exactly. But she's not being witnessed as like I guess what she is, right? As a vampire. Hmm. Interesting. Okay. And so if because of the way oddities work, right, and gods and devils are the same thing, right? Yeah, yeah. Wouldn't it literally change her existence as an oddity, right? Ooh, sure. Interesting. So is this when the darkness is gonna, that would kind of make sense to me, maybe. Oh, there he is. Oh, yeah. That is a long sword, huh? Hmm. Absolutely. Oddities, aberrations. Hmm. Makes more sense why he reacted the way he did upon being made a vampire then, right? Well, maybe, maybe. I guess we don't know the full story yet. No, and I like Aragi's new clothes. Sure. I don't believe you. I don't believe you, Shinobu. Yeah, I'm sure. Remember when you remembered Skihi's name at the end of Skihi Phoenix? Like, come on. I literally don't believe her. Not at all. Aberration killer. Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. That was the only way you could differentiate him. Yeah, uh-huh. Hmm. Well, yeah, she was worshipped as a god, right? Yeah, he didn't see her as like a monster, I'm sure, right? Just like everyone else there. Exactly. Yeah. Hmm. Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay. I wonder him being in like a yeah, him being in like such a high position in society. I wonder there's some kind of meaning behind that, you know? Ooh, one large and one small. Was the other one? Yeah. Okay. Dream span. I guess. I said yeah, that would just be a normal sword. The aberration reviver. Oh, how does that work? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Huh. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, what happened? What ended up changing? Like, how did you get into the position where you made him into a vampire? Sure, I suppose, right? But if she was changing as an oddity anyway, I guess. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. Interesting. Hmm. Okay. That's like what we've said about like the shrine and like everything gathering here because of her being here, right? So there was the like the weird stuff in Kabuki, right? About that. Interesting. So it is also so I guess the bad stuff is also a result of like people's beliefs then it must be, right? Oh. Yeah, the one you don't even remember the name of course. Hmm. I did not catch that at all. A job for the police, I guess. We're playing Higurashi now. Small town mystery. Okay. Until there were none. Just none? Just every what, just everyone was okay. Just everyone was gone. All right. That wow. Yeah, I guess. Okay. Rough, I suppose. Wow. Okay. Hmm. God, I love the lighting in this scene. No one left anywhere. Huh. Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, obviously, like with especially with the graphic they just used there, it's making you think it's the darkness doing this, right? Interesting. Yeah. The same maybe for the same reason that like they aren't viewing you as like a vampire, right? Huh. Yeah. Interesting. I wonder what is the bad stuff exactly, right? Like what is it, you know? So I went home and napped. Thank you. Thank you. Exactly, exactly, exactly. Can't blame you for that one. The first minion, I assume. Being like, hey, get up from your nap. We gotta go figure this out. Ooh. Yeah. Hmm. Not catching any of that, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. It appeared. Oh, it's here. Yeah, everyone died, so I can't really blame him. Okay, okay, huh. I guess I don't know why it would have killed everyone else, but hmm. Thought it was a strange weather pattern. It's I guess. Oh wow, she. Hmm. Not all of you, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Oh, beautiful. Back to Antarctica. Oh, interesting. Huh. Yeah. God, I really got to think about that. Okay. Well, I feel like we're missing some stuff from the story here. I feel like we're really missing some stuff from the story here. Yeah. What? I feel like we're really missing some stuff. Okay, but I went what happened? Uh-huh. Well, she's saying almost. Yeah. Hmm. Uh-huh. But he wasn't a vampire yet, right? Hmm. Oh. And you can yeah. I mean that's to me it seems like that's kind of the feeling that led her to, you know, what happened to Kizu, right? Like that same mindset. Hmm. Yeah. Wow, even with just a hand, that's crazy. Okay. Huh. It's she wants to like write this off so much, right? And like saying she doesn't even remember his name. She tried to end her story without even mentioning him. Huh. It's if you say so, I guess. But like I feel like she would say the same thing about like Araragi and Kizu. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Oh, what? What? Really? Okay, here's after credits. Thank God. I was like, there's no way that's the end of the episode. Okay. Lots of stuff to think about. Man, huh. So more so to me, I mean, okay. So the darkness, right? It seems like, I mean, my initial assumption based off her story, there's just a few things that I don't really know what to make sense of, is that it showed up because she like lost her like purpose as an aberration, right? Like she went on and on about how it's like her what she was as a vampire was like gone, right? And she was becoming a god instead and all of this, right? Um I don't know why it would like kill all of the people around her who believed in her though. You know what I mean? I and at the same time it's like I don't know what that like means thematically either, right? Like, I mean, that's just the only thing there I can imagine that would make this crazy black blob come destroy you, right? Is she? But what even is it? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? You know, she's not allowed to change because she's an oddity. Like, that's weird. You know, like what? But what do we mean by change? What does it mean to change in the sense that we were talking about here, right? Change, like in an oddity sense, in the sense of like the way people perceive you changing you, right? I don't know. I don't know. Hmm. Well, you think Aragi's mentally strong? I guess, but I don't know if that's it. Yeah. I mean, all both of us here have a pretty good idea about that, huh? Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Yeah, makes sense, I suppose. I mean, just like Aragi was, right? Once he, yeah, like in Kizu 3, right? Hmm. Maybe this is why she doesn't want to talk about him anymore. It's just like this ending of their relationship didn't really go very well, huh? Yeah. Unsettled, I suppose. I I guess if you say so. Uh-huh, uh-huh. God, she wants to distance herself from him so much and just be like, "Oh, it just means nothing." But yeah, I like I kind of got the vibe of what he's said there, even though I didn't catch half of that, but sure. Hmm. I mean, obviously, what she was thinking in Kizu as well, obviously goes against this, right? The idea that he meant nothing to her or whatever. Oh, man, interesting. Yeah, yeah. Like this comparison between Araragi and the first minion, right? It is very clear. Oh, 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 I guess. Huh. I just wonder from Aragi's point of view how he is thinking about this. Because I think you could really. I don't know. And yet you did. Aragi came around, huh? Swore to God, huh? Hmm. A god or a vampire? Yeah. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Makes more sense why it's called Onimonogatari, right? Gods and demons, the same thing. That's what we learned in Anna. Okay. Huh. Right, we have this, of course, of course. I guess. Sure, sure. Uh-huh. Which one are you? Are they? I guess, if you say so. It's like that's not kinda similar, but like not really. In a sense. Okay. I couldn't tell. Okay, let's talk about the episode. So first of all, this episode was like beautiful. We just had these like amazing God, I mean like these shots just go on forever and it's all like stitched together and it's all man, it's great. Very amazing. Like, is this all really? I guess I can't really watch it again, but is this all? I mean, I can't, but like not right now. Is this all really just perfectly stitched together? Just this whole thing for this whole time? That is crazy. And there's like three of them or something. We do another one here, and then there's like another one like here or something somewhere. There's like another one. Yeah, it's crazy, crazy how beautiful this episode was. I don't know. They gave us some pretty stuff to look at. Well, we just listened to a Shinobu monologue the entire time, but I am down with that. I love these kinds of episodes. So, Shinobu talks about her past. Where do I even want to start? I don't know. There's so many things we could start with here. Let's talk like mechanically first, because to me this is like the thing that's easiest to get out of the way, that I don't have to like ramble about forever. So the darkness. What? And no, this isn't gonna be easy at all. The darkness. What is the darkness? So she talks a lot here about the darkness showing up, and um, here there was a specific line in here that really made me think for sure. Where was it? Was it like here? Yeah, she like really prefaces all of this stuff about the darkness showing up. She prefaces it with lines like this, right? That the problem is her existence as a vampire and all of this stuff, right? Um, yeah, that the existence of Kiss Shot, Ezra, Orient, Heart Under Blade as an aberration gathers aberrations, all of this, blah 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 blah. Um, she talks so much about how her existence as a vampire is being threatened throughout this backstory, and I guess to me, it just kind of seemed clear that the darkness, I imagine, showed up because she lost her meaning as a vampire, right? That it showed up to, like, I guess, destroy her because she isn't a vampire anymore, right? That it's almost like I guess, here's kind of my thought process with it, right? She says when she was in Antarctica that her existence was, like, waning, right? Or, like, she felt it becoming, like, faint or something. I don't remember what her exact words were. And I guess at some point you would imagine then, okay, if aberrations and oddities can only exist through the belief of people, right? Like thinking that they exist, right? Believing in them. Then what happens if people don't believe in them for a long time, right? Eventually you would think if her existence starts like waning, becoming faint, then she would like get destroyed eventually, right? She just wouldn't exist anymore. So at this point, I'm kind of now imagining that the darkness like fulfills that purpose, right? That when an oddity, no one believes in it anymore, and it's like, and I guess for her case, it was people believed in her, they just didn't see her as a vampire, right? And I guess like the essence of her as an oddity is she's a vampire. So then the darkness showed up to destroy her, right? Like that's like the final straw. That's the last thing, right? I guess that is probably related to like all the bad stuff too, like circling around. I don't know what to make of it exactly. But she was saying that like the negative energy, the bad stuff that becomes aberrations, wasn't like forming either. So I imagine that that kind of like shows how her existence as an oddity itself was like not really there because no one saw her as a vampire. Everyone was seeing her as a god, right? I don't think being seen as a god had anything to do with the darkness showing up. I think it was just the fact that she was not like being seen as like what she is, I guess. Like thematically, I don't really know what to make of it, right? That's like a you could take some weird messages out of that. You know, the idea that she what isn't allowed to change, I guess, because she's an oddity. I mean, that's just weird because she has changed like as a person, right? She has changed like as a character, right? Like her personality and like things she thinks, stuff like that has changed and evolved throughout the story. But what does it mean if she isn't allowed to like not be a vampire? You know what I mean? Like what could you say that's like an analogy for the idea that there's some kind of essential part of her that's unchangeable, and if it ever changes, the darkness comes and destroys her, right? Like that's just weird. I don't know what to make of that, you know? Because like my what I would want to say, of course, is that anyone can essentially change almost anything about themselves, right? You know, like anything about like who you are as a person, other than like, you know, like physical characteristics about yourself, I guess, like stuff like that, right? But anything that truly like makes up like who a person is something that can be changed. But maybe we're just saying that her existence as a vampire isn't part of that? I don't know. I don't know. It's weird to think about thematically. But yeah, I guess that's what I think the darkness is. Um, and also, I mean, obviously, the other reason I think that that could be what the darkness is because you could say that's like true for Aragi as well, right? I guess it really depends on how you want to say the darkness works, right? Like, let's say, because in the last discussion we said all this stuff about how Aragi and the darkness, like, I compared the darkness almost to like the idea of this change within Araragi. And it's like, you know, there's all of these parallels between how you can imagine Araragi viewing like himself changing and like what the darkness is in the story, right? The darkness has showed up and was chasing him around and was trying to destroy him. The same way that he can God, sorry. The same way that he can imagine like himself not existing anymore if he allows himself to be changed, right? That was his whole thing in Kizu, right? Um, it being like it's the way it's like this threatening black orb, this thing that he doesn't want to look at, this thing that he doesn't want to acknowledge, right? Kind of, it's the same, right? It's like this. It's the way you can imagine he doesn't want to acknowledge the change within himself, right? All of these things, right? So I guess you could almost say in that sense, if that's what I'm saying the darkness is, if I'm saying that the darkness showed up to destroy Araragi as well, that doesn't really make sense in the same way that it does for Shinobu. Because Shinobu, well, I mean, Araragi is an oddity too, in a sense. He's part vampire, right? Whatever it means to be an oddity, who knows? But I don't really think it's true for the same way, right? Like Araragi just hasn't had the same weird like vampire lack of existence thing going on. Um, so I guess you could say theoretically that the darkness showing up is like self-determined, right? That like it has to do with the mindset of the person that the darkness comes up to destroy that makes it show up, right? Because then I could imagine Araragi certainly meeting that criteria. Same with Shinobu, right? Shinobu in this episode was talking about how it was impossible for her to be a god and like it was never going to work out and all of this stuff, right? So certainly, in a sense, it's like she wasn't viewing herself as a god. She said in this episode that like she should have left when she found out they didn't believe in vampires, all of this stuff. If she was thinking that in the same moment back then as well, then the darkness could have showed up in it being like self-determined in her mind. Like she thinks that her existence has like changed fundamentally and she's not the same person anymore. So then the darkness shows up to destroy her, right? Kind of the same thing with like Araragi, right? Like I guess in that sense you could say the darkness could be representative of some kind of like self-destructive impulse, something like that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know how to connect the darkness showing up here as like the thing that erases oddities when no one believes in them anymore makes sense. That just makes sense to me, right? There has, I guess, I like. her existence was disappearing. The darkness shows up to erase her, right? That makes sense. For Araragi, if it showed up and it was targeting Araragi, unless you just want to say it was like targeting Shinobu in his shadow or something, I don't know. Um, oh, I mean, or I guess you could say it's targeting Hajikuji. Um, would it be targeting Hajikuji? Like maybe. I guess it depends on like what her purpose as an oddity is, because I mean, she still does do the whole thing where she's like lost all the time and she just kind of wanders around, right? I guess for Hajikuji, we don't really know enough about like what it means to be the lost cow or the snail, or whatever you want to call her, to say whether or not the darkness could be targeting her. Maybe. I just want to focus on Aragi because I think the parallel between Shinobu and Aragi is so clear that I think that like makes sense, right? It's just for the darkness for both of them. I don't know what it like means, right? Let's say even if the darkness showed up to chase Hajikuji, because now that I think about that more, maybe that makes even more sense, right? I don't know how I didn't think about that until right now. Maybe that does make sense, that the darkness would have shown up to chase Hajikuji. Like, sure, right? She was there the whole time. She's been here the whole time, right? Um, Even if it showed up to chase Hajikuji and not Araragi, I think everything I said about the darkness in relation to Araragi still makes sense, right? I think obviously you could still say the darkness does represent all of those things for Araragi, even if right now it hasn't literally shown up to kill Araragi. Like, you know what I mean, right? Um, I almost wonder if Araragi is going to think that it's targeting him, but I don't know. I'm because that would make so much sense if he does think that, right? Um, but I don't know. It depends. It depends. Okay, I guess that's all my thoughts on the darkness out of the way. Maybe. I feel like there's so much stuff you could say the darkness represents. I don't even know. It feels so, and it's like intentional too. It's like such a the way that like Shinobu said something about how like it's not even an oddity. It's like something like even deeper than that, something like more primal, you know? Because like how oddities and aberrations already represent like such like meta things in the story. It's like the darkness is somehow even a layer beyond that, just like in design and like the purpose it feels like it's serving in the story right now. It is so meta, and I feel like there is so much meaning you could attribute to it that it's very hard to like nail down exactly. But I guess maybe that's the point. I guess there's probably a lot of interpretations you could have from it, and even if there's like some specific purpose they end up saying that it serves in the story, like it makes more and more sense to me the more I think, the idea of it just being the thing that erases oddities if no one believes in them anymore, right? um and I guess like it fits for Hajikuji. You could say like I don't know, maybe it just depends on what her purpose as an oddity is, right? Like I don't know, she's still been wandering around lost. Is that not enough? I don't know. Anyway, even if that's all the darkness is, I still think thematically and like for Aragi and for Shinobu, it still certainly represents like all of these things about them. There's too many parallels between the darkness and like the way Aragi was thinking about it when it was chasing him, and the way Shinobu was thinking about it here, and like their characters and all of this stuff, for it to just be like something simple. You know what I mean? It's so much deeper than that, like for sure. Okay, we talked about the darkness. Let's like go through the episode now. I know I'm going to talk more about it, but whatever. Can't do anything. Can't do anything about that. So Shinobu starts off with a preface, a warning. You should know that I'm going to talk about when I created my first minion. Don't get jealous. It's interesting. Oh, okay. Shinobu's attitude about the first minion is very, it's very transparently like she is trying to distance herself from him as much as possible, right? And I think that makes sense. I really wonder how much of it comes down to just that last conversation they had, when he, like, I guess said all this stuff to her that I think probably really hurt her, right? The idea that she was an evil demon that killed everyone and blah, 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 right? I imagine their relationship is probably much deeper than she makes out in this story. And I think this first line really, really shows that, right? Because, like, she tells Araki, don't get jealous. But, like, don't get jealous of what? According to her, the way she tells the story, she barely knew the guy. She didn't know his name. She didn't care about him. Like, who cares, right? But no, I think just the fact that she felt the need to preface the story with don't get jealous shows that she knows that her relationship with him was much deeper than she tells us in this story, right? I think she just has this, she wants to separate herself from it. She doesn't really want to think about it. She wants to tell herself she's so separated from it, you know? It would be so easy for her to do that with it being 400 years ago, to just tell herself, yeah, I mean, that guy meant nothing to me. It was all 400 years ago. Who cares, right? But I think it's clear that it affects her much more than that, right? So she was in Antarctica. God, even I mean, every line here means so much. I feel like I was in top form in my prime, and at my prime, then it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. No, I think that line actually makes so much sense because, like, yeah, it was the best of times. She was most powerful, and she was in her prime. But it was the worst of times because we know how being a vampire like led her, like what that led her to like the place that she was in mentally, like in Kizu. You know what I mean? So yeah. Because again, for her, it's like being a vampire kind of represents the opposite of what it does for Aragi, right? For her, being a vampire is like isolation and being separated from everyone. You know what I mean? Like being, like the way she literally eats other people, right? And she's elevated on a she kind of does it herself, honestly, but the way she elevates herself like above humanity, right? She sees herself as, she's kiss shot, she's like a god, essentially, before even literally like becoming one, you know. So separated from like relationships and everything, Obviously, like her tendency, like even in this story, to try and separate herself as much as she can from the first minion shows how easy it is for her to have fallen into the place that she was in Kizu, It's like what? I mean, yeah, it's like she's scared of connection in a sense. And I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, of course, there's the whole thing, like in Nisei, in the bath episode that she told to Aragi, the whole thing about how anyone that that he might live forever, and anyone that he has a relationship now, he'll just see them all die, right? It's like you imagine as she's saying that she's probably speaking from personal experience. It would be so hard being a vampire, not only just because you're a vampire and you're so like otherworldly in a sense, and so powerful and so different from humans, but you also live forever, right? So it's like she really was speaking from personal experience in that moment, I imagine, just facing loss forever, right? And just unable to have a relationship that lasts your whole life. So she was in Antarctica to look at the aurora. I guess that's relatable. That'd be pretty cool to go down there. But there were no people there to witness her as an oddity, so her existence began to weaken. Of course, of course. And she jumped. It was a much more impressive jump than Ononoki. I believe you, Shinobu. Don't worry. You destroyed Antarctica. I fully believe you. It was much better than hers. And she fell into a lake. Also, I just want to say, obviously, like all this stuff, I guess it wasn't really brought up, so maybe not. But as I was watching this, I'm like, okay, I'm sure where she is right now has to be like where we're at, right? Surely wherever she landed was like right near where we are, right? I kind of imagined we were like going to end up going to, the North Shirahebi Shrine. But then we didn't, so maybe not. I really thought that's where this was going to go. I thought we were going to like go to the shrine. It was going to be, the shrine was still there back then, something, blah, 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 blah. But then none of that happened, so maybe not. So she landed in a lake, caused rain. Everyone worshipped the lake, which I guess like makes sense. There was a big drought, and I guess like maybe since they worshipped the lake, they couldn't like drink the water in the lake, right? So I don't know, maybe because I was thinking in the moment like, okay, if there's a big drought and everyone's dying, there's a lake right there. But maybe they didn't use the lake because like it was an object of worship, I suppose. Hmm. They thought it was a miracle, and they started seeing her as a god. So the idea of a god is very interesting. After, I mean, the last two arcs, we've really been talking about gods for a while, huh? In Hana, we talked about gods. The idea of gods and devils being the same, right? I mean, that was kind of the whole thing about Hana was like this idea of like good and evil not really existing. It all being a perspective, right? Even good actions and bad actions themselves not even existing, right? Like, like Kaiki and Gaintoe and Numachi, they all had their own things to say about it, right? Gaintoe said that like gods and devils are the same thing, all of that, right? Makes a lot more sense now that this installment is called Onimonogatari, maybe. Because, like, yeah, like, devil's story, and it's like she became a god, right? Same thing, right? Makes sense. Um, but gods and devils are the same thing, according to Hana. From the last arc, Nadeko becoming a god was kind of like representative of her like abandoning herself, right? Abandoning like some kind of true version of herself, abandoning her humanity in a sense, a very different kind of humanity than like Aragi's kind of humanity, I think. But um, her becoming a god in Otori was certainly not a very positive thing, right? So I don't know. I don't know. I am still unsure of what exactly to make of the idea of being a god, right? There's this idea of being like transcendent of humans, right? There's all of this stuff that I imagine does kind of fit with Shinobu, with Kiss Shot, right? Like the way she views herself, the way she viewed like relationships with other people, especially at the time, right? That her being a god like makes sense kind of the same way Nautiko is kind of the same, right? I think Nautiko did kind of view people, I guess you could almost say, in a similar way to the way that Kiss Shot does, right? Like Nautiko is unable to form genuine relationships with others. And yeah, she did. She did end up becoming a god, kind of in a similar way that Shinobu here did, right? Um, I don't know. I feel like there's so much meaning you could take out of being a god. But it's all so vague that I'm just, man, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Shinobu becomes a podcaster, of course. I would listen. I would listen to the Shinobu podcast. It would be great. I guess that's kind of what this episode was. God, there were so many text flashes. There's no way I'm gonna get them all. It's just impossible. They made Shinobu into a god. However, I probably already missed like a bunch. But like, what are we gonna do? I don't know. You're not the type that's alright with merely being revered. So many text flashes that just say fickle in personality, a vampire fixated on being a demon. Interesting. Just like you said, such a life as a god didn't last for long. And I think, and again, it's like, if we go back to the darkness, the idea that perhaps what makes the darkness show up is like self-determined. That she herself thought that she lost her purpose, right? That she thought that her life as a god wasn't like fit for her. Then the darkness showing up to destroy her like makes sense if it is like a self-determined thing, because then it also relates like to the idea of like suicide, which I think makes sense, right? That being like a self-determined thing, her deciding that her life is like what doesn't fit her, that her life has lost its purpose or something, right? It's the darkness showing up for that self-determined reason, being the same, you know, like and both of these characters have had character arcs about suicide, right? That like those connections like make sense to me. I don't really know like how to say it other than that. I wasn't fit to be a god. Interesting. Huh. Her saying she isn't fit to be a god actually makes sense, right? If we were saying that being a god, that personality, like being a god kind of represents rejecting like humanity and rejecting like in a sense like relationships with other people, rejecting yourself, rejecting all of these things, becoming transcendent above humanity, all these things, right? That was kind of like her attitude that she had like as a vampire for so long, right? And that's the same attitude that led her to the mental place that she was in Kizu, right? So her saying that she wasn't fit to be a god, or wasn't fit to be like what she was, like even in Kizu, right? Even though she wasn't literally like a god in the same sense then. That makes so much sense, right? Because like, yeah, she's very different now. You couldn't describe Shinobu as she is now as like a god in that same sense, right? She's kind of rejected those same things, right? Like, she is certainly much more open to relationships now and like forming ties to people, specifically Aragi, I guess, than she was before, right? So yes, I guess she wasn't fit to be a god. It's interesting that she would frame it in that way, though, say that she wasn't fit to be a god, right? Because that makes it sound like being a god is something desirable, right? Which I guess makes sense. I think most people would say being a god is like a desirable thing. But maybe that's like the point, right? Maybe that's the idea. Maybe what we're supposed to think is that perhaps being a god isn't desirable, right? Because I mean, what we just had Hana, where we talked about gods and devils are the same thing. We just had Otori, where Nautiko became a god, and like, look what that is doing for her, right? So I don't know. Maybe I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting that Shinobu frames it in this way, that she wasn't fit to be a god, because I think she's better off not being a god, right? I think with what like being a god means in this story, and maybe like if you imagine like becoming a god in real life, you would kind of face the same thing, right? losing your connection to others because you aren't like a human anymore, right? Maybe just being a god isn't a good thing in the first place, right? Maybe it makes sense. I guess I'm surprised that Shinobu still thinks of it in that way. But I guess it would be really hard to reject it fully, I suppose. The idea of like being a god and what that could mean for her, right? Got the like foreshortening in this shot. It reminds me of like that famous painting of like Jesus laying down, right? Like what? Like man, this is impressive, huh? Hajikuji Maioi, at our side, still hasn't regained consciousness. This line absolutely means something. I'm telling you, it means something. There's a reason this line is here. Something about, like, what Hajikuji represents for Araragi and the fact that she is still unconscious in this moment, right? But I'm not sure. I could probably ramble about it for 30 minutes and not have a clear answer. So maybe we should just avoid doing that. But I hope you understand what I mean. With like the things we've discussed before about what you could say Hajikuji, the way that Araragi views Hajikuji. And like if you take this line in that context, replace Hajikuji Maioi with what you could say Hajikuji represents for Araragi. And her having not regained consciousness. Like what does that mean? Right? It's something relevant to like the conversation they're having now and like the mindset that Araragi is in this conversation. But I'm not going to ramble about it for 30 minutes. I just said that. So we're not going to do that. Well, after being set up by the people as a god, staying there meant a break for me, so I was in good spirits, I guess, I suppose. So much easier to be a god, huh? So they built a shrine in the lake. Well, I guess Shinobu materialized it, of course. Of course, she made some new clothes for Aragi too. I think the like red sweater he's wearing that she makes for him, that's like the same red shirt he's wearing when he shows up to save Hanakawa, right? Like remember he shows up, he has like the red shirt on, it's all ripped up and stuff. So yeah, the ties, they're coming together. They're coming together. She made it rain for them, of course, of course. A way to kill time. I thought that my power of existence would revive as long as they kept witnessing me, but they aren't witnessing her. Yeah, they aren't witnessing her as a vampire, right? Exactly, yeah. So even though it's not stated explicitly, I feel like the whole thing about the darkness destroying her because she isn't a vampire anymore, I think Shinobu, like, thinks that too, right? Because she keeps saying that's, like, the problem, right? The problem is that they aren't witnessing her as a vampire, and the problem is the darkness showing up, right? So, yeah. Maybe it's just obvious, right? The problem was that I was considered to be witnessed as a god. Okay, even if, like, I guess we could take this even further, the idea of other people witnessing her as a god, right? It's like, if her, like, being a god, thinking of herself as a god, and thinking of herself even, like, as a vampire, right? Like, the attitude that she had about, like, people and relationships, right? That was like her end of it. Other people witnessing her as a god is kind of like the same thing in a sense, right? Like if other people think she's a god and other people think that she is this transcendent being and all of this stuff, right? Not human, so separate from everyone else, then that's kind of like an equivalent problem, right? It's still going to be really hard to form relationships with anyone and all of that, you know? And that makes you think about like the first minion, right? The Aberration Slayer, the original Oddity Slayer, whatever you want to call him. I wonder if because of his position, being someone who had been fighting against and slaying aberrations and oddities for so long, someone who was much more familiar with, like, the world of oddities that, like, Shinobu was a part of, I wonder if he was able to, like kind of cut through that, right? Like, not witness her as a god, and was able to, like, form a more meaningful relationship with her in that way, right? Because he's more familiar with, like, that kind of thing, you know? And I mean that probably, right? That makes sense. That makes sense why he would be the one she was able to form this relationship with, right? Even though in the story she says that her relationship with him was like, who cares? Didn't matter. I don't believe her. But God, picking a thumbnail for this episode is gonna be hard. Maybe it's just this. This is so beautiful. There are so many beautiful shots. I don't even know. Man, what I should have done was to reject the treatment as a god and depart once I realized the village had no vampire legends. Yeah, huh. You can simply say that I got what was coming to me because I was pretending to be a god, right? And that's kind of, yeah. Hmm. At least that's what he said. Oh, that is what he said, right? I assume in one of their conversations that they had after she made him a vampire, that probably is one of the things that he said to her, right? Yeah, that sounds about right, huh? Hmm. No, that's actually some very interesting insight, maybe, into him as like a character, right? That he told her that she got what was coming to her for pretending to be a god. Well, maybe. I guess that does kind of just sound like a spiteful kind of remark that he would make, um, when he's pissed off at her for, in his mind, killing everyone and turning him into a monster. You know. Hmm. So he was the owner of Heartspan, right? The sword that kills oddities. I wonder how he got it. I wonder. I assume. I've always kind of assumed this. I think I've said it before. I assume that the sword only kills oddities because, like, the sword is kind of like an oddity itself, right? Because people think that because people believe that the sword can kill oddities instantly, the sword can kill oddities instantly, right? Like, that makes sense to me. That's kind of the only way I can imagine it working, is like by oddity logic. But I don't know. That makes sense, I guess. So he was a specialist, maybe the first specialist. Who knows? Got some more text flashes. No. Fighting feels wrong. Rather, vampire hunter. Huh. The descendant of a long-standing clan that made a living by defeating monsters. So, okay, not the first specialist, but a very old specialist, huh? I think that was what he said, or maybe he didn't. Yeah, Shinobu, you're really fooling me into thinking that you know nothing about him and that you don't even remember his name and anything. You really smooth. Doesn't know his name. Doesn't even want to say his name, huh? Because her wanting to separate himself from him, maybe you can take a more charitable view on it. Maybe not. Maybe charitable is the wrong word, but like maybe it's more than just her wanting to separate herself from like him as a relationship because it ended badly. But it's also like it has to remind her of so many things, right? Like it has to be such a stark reminder of like her failure with him, right? Because there's so many parallels between Aragi and the first minion, right? I think Aragi thinks of it too at like the end of the episode, right? It's almost like the first minion in a sense literally was like a failed Aragi, right? Like I think from Aragi's perspective, it's probably different than that. I think you can imagine some ways that Aragi could view the first minion that aren't very good. Like good in a mental health standpoint. We'll talk about that in a minute. Um, there's so many parallels between them that it's like I imagine since Shinobu is now with Aragi and like has this relationship with him that didn't end horribly like that one does, like that one did. I imagine that she just that just has to be another reason why she doesn't even want to think about him, right? Because I imagine she sees it too. How similar you could imagine Aragi and the first minion to be, that of course she just doesn't even want to think or talk about him, right? With especially to Aragi. I don't know. Like, yeah, I only vaguely remember proper names of the human world. I never call anyone by their name. Like, remember when she remembered Skihi's name? And was talking about how, like, oh, the ski part that means moon and blah, 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 right? Like, yeah, you're not fooling me, Shinobu. I guess, has she ever called Aragi by his name, ever? I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm trying to think. I maybe in like Kizu at some point. I don't think so though. Because she just called him Minion in Kizu, right? Because remember, like right after she made her a vampire, she was like, "Oh, I don't even know your name," but she's like, "Oh, who cares? I'm gonna call you my minion." And then ever since coming back and started talking after Kizu, she's been calling him like Master, right? So I don't think so, huh? Because I wonder, right? Like, I guess like her not wanting to call people by their name, that's just kind of another, that's in the same vein of her not wanting to like form these deeper relationships with people, which makes sense, right? I mean, obviously, it feels like such a silly thing to do, like with Aragi, right? That seems very silly, but I don't know. Hmm. The first aberration killer, the first servant, huh? those are some very interesting lines. Aragi thinking about him in that way, right? Because it really is. I think the way that Aragi could almost view the first minion is like as a better version of himself. Um, but we'll talk about that when we get there at the end of the episode, because I think there's some text flashes that I think were very relevant to it. Yeah, so the first minion didn't show up to kill Shinobu, of course, because she was just a god, right? Naturally. He was in a very high position in society, a man of long-standing clan. Arrived in a palanquin. I don't know how to say that word. I wonder, him being in such a high position in society, I want to say that's relevant in some way, but I don't know. I don't know how to, like, thematically tie that in, so I'm not going to try. I don't know. Huh. Because, like, I want to, like, try and connect it to, like, the way Shinobu views herself, like, as someone who's, like, transcendent above, like, humanity in general, and the way that the first minion himself is also, like, someone who is so has a high position in society, is like revered by people around him in the same way, right? But I don't know what it means. I'm just not sure. Definitely something there, though. So there are two blades. There's Heart Span that kills aberrations, and there's the shorter one, Dream Span, which takes aberrations and brings them back to life. What the hell does that mean? Right? Like, what are we talking about? How does that work? Like, what? I just don't even understand what that could possibly mean. Like, it takes aberrations and brings them back to life. I just have literally no idea. Yume Watari, yeah, because the heart spans Kokoro Watari. This is Yume Watari, yeah, makes sense. I have no idea what this like means, right? Like it has to mean something. I don't know. It can bring oddities back to life. I guess that's pretty useful. I don't know. How does that, like, what do you do? How do you do it? Right? Okay, let's say an oddity just got deleted from existence. It's not around anymore. You just slash the air and the oddity comes back to life. Like I just don't I just don't understand. The katana that restores aberrations, huh? Why didn't you just turn into their god for good? It sounds like you were well suited, like you were a perfect match for them. She certainly didn't think so, right? And she says the impulse to suck blood is problematic enough, but I don't think that's really it. That wasn't the only problem. And she relates it to just the idea of her existence as a vampire, like, waning, but I think it's more personal, like, why she thinks that she can't be a god, especially now, right? Because I imagine that in her own mind, she understands how much happier she is now as Shinobu versus how she was as Kiss Shot. So I just wonder if in her own mind she connects those things as well, but who knows? Yeah, so the negative energy that's yet to become aberrations, gathering all of this stuff, right? Still don't really know, like, what that means. It's something, obviously, like, mechanically in universe, it's something related to just, like, belief in her as an oddity, right? Like, I guess you could just say it's related to, like, the thing that, like, Oshino said about how, like, once you run into an oddity, you're likely to find more, right? Because it's almost like once people believe in her as a vampire and understand what she is, they're more likely to believe and run across other oddities, right? And it's like that, I guess that could be representative of the energy around her in a sense, right? Because her being like such an impressive oddity, maybe that's why she's able to, like, so much dark, bad energy, whatever you want to call it, gathers around her, right? Hmm. I didn't realize that at all that absolutely no bad stuff was gathered there. The people of the region were the first to notice the problem. They say people don't come home after heading out. Text flash. Is that just say vanishing? Vanishing. Okay. And suddenly we're in Higurashi. We have a small town mystery to solve. We couldn't find any evidence, so we concluded there was probably a crime committed by a human. This was a job not for us. God, so many text flashes. There's no job for a god and a hunter of the supernatural. There's a job for the police. Did the police exist 400 years ago in Japan? I guess I'll take your word for it. We decided. Okay, huh. In summary, I didn't do anything. and still they disappeared. The people of the region continued to go missing. So, okay, if my whole view on the darkness is like this thing about it destroying oddities if they've lost their purpose, or perhaps if the oddity themselves thinks they've lost their purpose, I kind of like that more. But why would it destroy everyone who believed in her? I have no idea. I don't know. That kind of throws a wrench into everything, but I'm just not gonna think about it because I just have no explanation for it. I really don't know. I don't know. I am not sure. And still they disappeared. The people of the region continued to go missing, and that continued until there were none. Just there's no one. There's no one around. Oh, I just thought of something. Like, maybe, I guess you could say the reason it's killing everyone around her. Let's say the darkness, if it is a self-determined thing, and that is why it shows up, is if the oddity themselves, or the person, maybe, if it's after Araki, I don't know, thinks of themselves as having lost their purpose and not being like themselves anymore or something, right? And that's why the darkness shows up. Would there be a reason why, if it's self-determined in that way, would there be a reason that Shinobu herself would have been thinking that the people around her would need to be destroyed as well? You know what I mean? Like if it's like unique to this situation, right? Maybe, right? Because I just think Shinobu does have this. She does have her attitude about this weird, like distancing herself in relationships, viewing herself as like this transcendent being, all of this stuff, right? From like kiss shot times, you know. And I feel like that has to be related to like all of these people being destroyed by the darkness as well. If it's like a self-determined thing. But I don't know. It just feels like a vague connection that I don't really know how to like put into words other than that, right? Because like that would make a lot more sense to me than it being like some mechanical in-universe reason for why the darkness destroyed everyone, right? If it is something self-determined in her mind, and that's why the darkness acted that way, right? Because it seems like right now, for example, the darkness isn't going around and killing everyone, as far as we know, I guess. Um, it just showed up and started chasing Aragi and Hajikuji, and I guess Shinobu in the shadow as well. Unclear who it's actually chasing, I guess. Interesting. Interesting. The entire settlement became deserted. I love the lighting in the shot. It reminds me of Kizu. It reminds me of like those early scenes in Kizu when Aragi, like with the crows and everything, you know? Like I mean, literally like the first scenes in the first movie. Nobody left in any of the settlements around the area. Is like a boundary. Everyone, I guess, in a sense, I guess you could say everyone with any connection to her was destroyed by this, right? And again, it's like I could so imagine that being a self-determined thing in her mind, like the way that she could view relationships with others, right? She is a vampire who eats people, right? So you could imagine in her mind, she thinks all of these people who have this, who are worshiping her and have this connection to her, are like in danger or something. You know what I mean? And they should be destroyed by her, right? It's almost like you could say if she was like fulfilling her duty as a vampire instead of as a god, all of these people would have been dead, right? Because as a vampire, she would have eaten them all, but she's being a god, so they aren't dead. It's like the darkness shows up to like correct that. I don't know. I don't know. Whether or not they knew me. Yeah, it's not about worship. It's just this. It's just a connection to her at all, right? They don't have to worship her. Hmm. So there's no negative energy piling up. Has to have something to do with like them viewing her as a vampire, right? Of course. Hmm. It grossed me out, so I went home and napped. I guess, you know what? I guess that makes sense, right? I guess that's fine. I guess that's okay. So to forget about it all, I tried to go back to sleep again. However, someone showed up to disturb me from my slumber. It was the original aberration killer, of course, right? It's interesting, of course, he is the one who like pushes her into action in this moment to go figure this out. But of course, obviously she didn't remember his name, they had no relationship, she doesn't care. Obviously, of course, right? Why would he question what she said? Ended up going around the villages again with the original aberration killer. Everyone's gone, but then the darkness is here. Without warning, something evil happened. Suddenly, without warning, it appeared. Hmm. The darkness, completely disjointed in the middle of the day. More text flashes. Finally, it showed itself, the real problem. I initially thought it was some strange weather pattern. Shinobu, you're stupid. Why? How would it be a weather pattern? I don't like. Man, I guess I don't know. She needs to learn about the weather. I don't know. God, this is like the most beautiful part of the episode. This like crazy shit with her hair here. You know, man. Hmm. She only had a quarter of her left. I've never run away from anything interesting. Never run away from anything. Definitely. It's like it's so similar to like it's something about the way she's viewing it is very relevant. Just the same way that like Araragi viewing the darkness in the last episode was like felt so meaningful, you know? Huh. The darkness never came chasing after me, no matter how long I waited. Interesting that the darkness itself never didn't come to Antarctica, you know? It makes you wonder. Well, I don't know. I wonder why. I wonder why the darkness didn't show up in Antarctica too, you know? Huh. I don't know. Maybe it was self-determined, right? Maybe it was purely self-determined, and since she left Antarctica, since she left that place, she stopped even thinking of herself as a god, as an object of worship. The darkness didn't show up anymore, right? Because, like, if it was purely determined by her not having a purpose as an oddity anymore, well, all she did was go to Antarctica, right? And in Antarctica, there's still no one there to believe in her as a vampire, so you would think the darkness would still show up and destroy her. But if it's self-determined and it's her thoughts about herself that make it show up, her thinking that she has lost purpose or become something she isn't, then the darkness not showing up anymore makes sense because she's not thinking of herself as a god anymore, right? In fact, like she bit the hand and made the minion, you know. So now she's really like, oh yeah, I'm a vampire, right? So the first aberration killer, she wanted to finish the story without even talking about him. um, so she made him into a vampire. She says all this stuff about how she thought it was just, you know, it's just like she really wants to excuse it, right? Like she prefaces it with all this stuff. She's like, "Oh, I was so lonely. It was so, you know, I like I was seized by isolation, you know." And then she gives this crazy excuse about like you know, there was like feeling threatened that makes her you know, yeah, this misattribution of arousal when she, you know, this weird she wants to distance herself so much from making him into a vampire, right? But I think maybe it is really just like genuine, at least what she was saying at the start, that she was lonely, that she wanted him back, right? Like, I imagine their relationship is much deeper than she was saying here. And I think she did. She wasn't ready to give up on him, of course, right? So she makes him a vampire. Hmm. Disappointment kicks in. So she bit into his wrist and made him a minion. Just like Araragi. She made him a minion. But, I guess we can talk about it now. Unlike Araragi, who, if we remember in Kizu, right, Araragi became a vampire. And his. What did he do first when he became a vampire? He did the Araragi thing where he pretends to not think about things that bother him, right? He loves to. That's like what he's doing with like his own character development, right? Um, he loves to not think about things that bother him. So it took him until Kizu 3 to acknowledge to himself that, oh yeah, vampires eat people. So then he immediately started throwing a fit and was like, oh, I have to die immediately, right? But he wasn't able to do that, right? Okay, and listen, right, that obviously him not dying in Kizu was good, right? But let's put ourselves in his mind, right? He thinks, okay, I'm a vampire now. I'm evil, right? He had so many reasons for thinking being a vampire is evil, right? In Kizu, it was both. It was literally it was the human connection monster thing, right? Like he literally became a monster and lost his humanity through his connection with other people, right? Becoming a vampire, right? So he thought that was like bad. He thought like, oh, I'm literally not myself anymore. I'm both a monster now and I'm not me, right? I'm a vampire. And being a vampire, you have to eat and kill other people, right? Which again, just because I love the fucking Kizu themes and analogies and everything so much. For him, again, like eating people as a vampire is representative of like what he thinks relationships are, right? Like draining life out of other people through your relationship with them, right? Like that's why he fears relationships, right? Is like that whole weird shit about humanity, you know. So he thought he was both literally, you know, he's a vampire now, so he's like reliant on other people to even be alive. He has to drink their blood, which is his worst nightmare. But also, like, literally, he has to eat and kill other people to be alive as a vampire. Which obviously he doesn't want to do, and that's bad, right? At the end of Kizu, his decision wasn't to return to being human and abandon Shinobu, right? He couldn't do that, right? And that was a good decision. That was a good decision, of course, right? Both of them are so much happier now as people in every way than they were at the start of Kizu, right? Like, their lives have both improved massively, even if, like, they both are resistant to accepting that, right? But in Aragi's mind, he agonized so much over what he did at the end of Kizu, right? Like, I think everyone understands by this point in the story, like, what's up with Aragi and that decision, right? Like, he agonized so much over it, he couldn't decide what to do, essentially, right? Oshino called it like a half-assed solution, because it really was, right? Aragi was unable to reclaim his humanity, he's unable to accept living as a vampire, which obviously, again, it's like, living as a vampire was, like, bad because yes, you'd have to eat people, but also, like, he was only a vampire. It was only bad because of, like, thematically the way that he viewed what being a vampire meant, right? All of that stuff, right? So I think in the long run, Araragi would view what the first minion did here, which was reject being a vampire entirely and actually go through with it and die, which is what he thought he needed to do, in Kizu at one point, in Kizu 3 at one point, right? The first minion was actually able to go through with that and do it, right? So I just can imagine completely in Aragi's head right now that he thinks that the first minion is essentially like almost a better, more noble version of himself, right? It's like the first minion. I mean, and that's like a crazy way to view it, right? Like I guess I'm not sure entirely. That is an insane way to view the situation, obviously, right? But it's just, again, it's like, unless you want to say that Aragi is completely changed and abandoned his entire past mentality about all of this from before, which I maybe, I don't think he has processed it that much to be able to view it in that way yet. I think he could be maybe not envious of the first minion, but just think the first minion was almost, like, better than him, right? Which makes so much sense about, like, Shinobu saying, like, oh, don't get jealous, right? Obviously, Shinobu wasn't talking about that, but the real thing that that Aragi could be jealous of is the first minion's almost, like, noble decision to die and reject vampirism, compared to Aragi, who could view accepting vampirism, accepting relationships and what vampirism means to him, not being able to make the decision that he maybe thinks he should have at some point, at the end of Kizu, not being able to do that, right? And the first minion did, right? And again, this is like a wrong way to view everything. I'm not agreeing with Aragi about any of this. I'm just saying this is how Aragi could be viewing it, like, very easily, right? Like, for sure. And of course, from Shinobu's perspective, because I think Shinobu's mind is less broken than Aragi's. But from Shinobu's perspective, Aragi and the first minion are so similar in, like, the situations that they were in, right? The way, like, and from her perspective, it's like the first minion is almost just like a failed Aragi, right? Like, the first minion actually decided to die and didn't want to keep living as a vampire, right? Aragi, even if Aragi blames himself as it was some kind of, like, personal weakness, him being unable to make a decision at the end of Kizu 3, even if he views it in that way, and I really think he does, maybe not anymore, like, actively, but, like, it would be hard for me to think that he's gotten over Kizu 3 at this point. I mean, I don't know. It would be, the first minion was, like, able to, he did it, he died, right? So from Shinobu's perspective, it just has to be, like, man, I just wonder what was going through her head at the end of Kizu 3 now with Aragi compared to the first minion, you know? Like, Just crazy how it almost did end up that same way with the first minion deciding to die and Araragi almost doing that same thing, right? So it's like, from Shinobu's perspective, they seem so similar. From Araragi's perspective, I think he just views this whole first minion thing very differently, I think. I just think that's very interesting, the way that they could both, like, have thoughts about the first minion that are very different because of, like, their relationship with him. You know, I guess Araki never had a relationship with him. But just the way that he could view this, you know? And I think it's like the complete opposite, right? Obviously, Shinobu would disagree completely. If Araki ever, like, vocalized the things that I just said, that I imagine he could be thinking, Shinobu would think he's insane, I imagine. But it makes sense to me. So I don't know. I don't know. Huh. He jumped into sunlight of his own will, turned to ash, and was no more. And Aragi looks away when he says that. And even like the way he phrases this, right? He did it of his own will, right? It's like almost like he is phrasing it as like this powerful thing for him to have done, right? Rejected becoming a monster in this case, right? Hmm. Regenerating in the flames, yeah, until everything is burned to ash. You didn't save him. That would be impossible. Back then, I didn't quite understand the meaning behind such actions by him. So it's like, even in that moment, it's like, Shinobu had to have been so different already to, like, by the time that Kizu happened, to, like, it's like she was, like, trying to fix her mistake from back then with Aragi in a sense, you know what I mean? I don't know, I wonder. I wish we could get Kizu from Shinobu's perspective. That would be amazing. I kind of doubt that would ever happen, but I would love it. By then, my relationship with him had completely broken down. And again, it's like just like how Aragi and Shinobu, that same thing happened at the end of Kizu, right? They started fighting to the death at the end of Kizu, right? The original Aberration Killer was angry I turned him into a vampire. Not a god, a demon. He learned she was a vampire, and Aragi's really thinking here. After reviving him from just one hand and wrist, and after he gained new life as a vampire, the first thing he said to me was, "You monster, how dare you scheme against us?" It's almost like, yeah, it's like the way that the first Aberration Killer, the first minion, was able to, like, immediately reject her and call her a monster and all of this stuff, right? It's like Aragi didn't do that in Kizu, right? Like, and again, for the 50th time, I'm not saying that would be a good thing for him to have done. I'm just saying I imagine him thinking of it in this way, right? Or being able to think of it in this way in some part of his mind, you know? Because in Kizu, it's like he was so hesitant to accept the idea of her being a monster, right? Of what it means to be a vampire, you know? Like, I just imagine Aragi viewing his actions in a way as, like, noble, right? Even though, obviously, like, it was... I don't know. Hmm. Hmm. I thought he was confused and deranged, but he would calm down in due time. There wasn't the tiniest, smallest, minutest wish to save him. That can't be true. If she were that kind of woman, then I wouldn't be here now. I wouldn't be alive as a half vampire. Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, it's obvious, it's clear that Shinobu cared about him much more than she is. Yeah, I mean, man, it has to have hurt her very deeply, like what he, you know. And I mean, I guess, and I wonder, I'm saying all this stuff about how Aragi could almost view his actions as, like, noble. Him seeing how much this kind of attitude did hurt Shinobu even in that moment, or thinking about that right now, that's, you know, something interesting to think about from his point of view, you know? Huh. I mean, I imagine he's agonized so much over his decision in Kizu anyway, that that's kind of like the same thing, right? But I don't know, I don't know. Threw himself into the sunlight in front of my eyes and died. It's like, man, it's like he did that just to hurt her. You could almost imagine, you know? Only called her kiss shot once. And it's like, and what Aragi thinks here, right? Yeah, just like me. If so, and he just looks up and he thinks, he doesn't finish that sentence. But I think in this moment, it's so clear he's thinking about how he was, like, just like him, right? That they were so similar, right? He died. He ceased to exist. He left behind a replica of Heartspan that I guess he might have created to try and kill Shinobu, I guess. It wasn't that I was persevering in my solitude out of stubbornness, but after seeing the blue blaze disappear, how his corpse vanished, I swore that I would never make a minion again. Yeah, and like this is her resistance to relationships, right? Like of course, yeah. In the end, in spite of everything, she couldn't hit it off with humans as a god or a vampire. The demon I can't say that word. Soliloquy? How do you say that word? I don't remember how to say that word. I know what it means, I've like never said it. With this bad ending, the curtain falls. Okay, that was a good episode. How am I stretching all of these discussions out to an hour long? I literally don't know. When this episode ended, I was thinking like, oh, this one probably, probably won't be as long. This was just like one scene. It was just them talking the whole time. But then it was an hour long anyway. So I'm sure, I hope people enjoy the discussions being so long. So there we go. But yeah, I guess that's it. So please subscribe if you enjoy my videos. Leave a comment, tell me what you think, and I will see you in the next one.